In this video, we're going to learn how to use the calculator to find a definite integral, so the actual area under a curve using the calculator. We're not going to worry about trying to find the integral, the antiderivative, the actual antiderivative. We know to find an integral, we take the antiderivative and then plug in the bounds. We don't want to do any of those steps ourselves. If we're trying to evaluate a definite integral using our calculator, just make it do all those steps itself. All right, this is actually the final skill. So we really only have 4 to 5 like really important skills. Knowing where all the buttons are is helpful as well. It's a kind of its own skill. Where's cosine, where's e to the x, where's natural log. But as we're doing practice problems, you'll slowly pick that up. But really, these are our skills: being able to graph, being able to solve equations, take the derivative for a value, graph the derivative, take an integral. It's not a lot of skills. You just need to be really proficient at them, because any question that requires the calculator will need one of these skills or multiple. All right, so our strategy, kind of similar to when we did derivatives. There's that math button, and then just under the derivative button is the integral button. All right, there is a way to find integrals using the graph, just like we did for derivatives, but it's not recommended to use. This is this weird algorithm that makes a lot of mistakes. I'm not sure why the calculator still use this. For most things on the AP exam, it probably works, but again, you don't want to do something where it could potentially be an error. Might as well just do the way that we know works every single time, and that's going to be just this one option. All right, so if you have a complex function, remember you don't have to type it inside of your integral. You can type it separately in the y equals part, make sure it looks right, and then just use that y1 variable to get it. All right, so let's see how to do the calculator. So we're just going to reuse the function we've used a lot. Just do something like this. The integral from 1 to 4, natural log of x squared plus 6x times sine of x dx. This one's not actually even possible to do by hand. So the only way you could do this one is with a calculator, because there's no way you could figure out the antiderivative of this function. So we have to use the calculator. So let's see how to use the calculator. All right. Clear off the things from the last video. All right. So now if I start on my calculator, I want to find the integral of this function. All right. Again, I personally would go straight to y equals and type that function in up here and make sure it looks exactly like the function. Make sure your parentheses are careful when there's multiplication and division. Division's a big one. Make sure you're putting parentheses around everything on the top and everything on the bottom. But this is my function. And now I want to find its integral. So I'm going to go back to the kind of normal calculator page. Again, this math button. 8 is derivatives. 9 is integral. So if I hit 9 or scroll down, 9 is just quicker. You can see, again, it's a nice thing with these newer calculators. It's exactly the way you would write it by hand. So we put our lower bound here, which in our example was 1. So I'm just going to type a 1. Then I'm going to hit the right arrow. That'll shoot me up to the top. 4. Hit the right arrow. That'll put me in here is what I want to take the integral of. And we know we don't want to type in the whole function. We already have it typed in the y equals part. So I go to variables, my y variables, my functions, I hit enter, and then this is all of them. All right, so 3 clicks instead of 30 clicks or whatever it takes you to write that function. And then what am I taking the variable with respect to? X. We have our dx. All right, and I hit that, and I get my answer. All right, so that's simple. And then you can redo it if you had to find multiple times. It's going to be a lot easier if you have this y1. I can even copy and paste it. If I go up here, highlight it, hit enter again, I can put in different bounds really quickly and find a different one. And then there's one extra thing I kind of want to just tack on at the end here. Maybe you had to find an integral and then you have to add 5 to it. So there's 2 ways you can do that. If I just once I get my answer, I can just type plus 5. And if you type a command before anything else, it's going to take your previous answer and add 5. But another way you can do it is, say I hit this enter, I got this number. You can store it as a random letter. So let's just say I would probably pretty much always use A, just because that's the first letter. But down here, STO, this will store the previous answer. And you can store it as any of these green things. So if I do alpha and then math, that'll store this as A. And now if I want to use this answer, I could bring back A. Oops, I picked the wrong thing. Alpha A. and then say I wanted to add 5 to a, I could do that. Maybe for another problem, I need to do like 2 times that integral. I keep doing second instead of alpha. Alpha a, there we go. 2 times that integral minus 8 or something like that. All right, you can store these values as the letters in green. All right, maybe you need to find these 2 separate integrals and then add them together. So as to say, like I found this one is a, maybe I also needed to find this integral and then add it to the other one. So now I can store this one as b, hit enter, and then I can do alpha a plus alpha b, and that gives me what happens when I add those 2 together. So just storing things. If you know you're going to have to use this answer again somewhere, it's helpful to use that store command. All right, so those are the basics of taking integrals with a calculator. It's just that 9th command in the math button, right, it says int in it. I give it integral. Again, this used to be a lot harder when I was in high school because the way you had to type it in was very precise. But now when you have it, it looks exactly the way you would write it, other than the fact that you don't have to write the whole expression by hand. But it looks like it should, so it's fairly straightforward once you know where the buttons are.